Hello, everyone. My name is Randy Hurst. I'm here with my friend Bill Buckland from Mandel Pipe. Today is June 4th, 2021, and this would be the 28th installment of the Legends of the Steel Pipe Business interviews. So today we're going to let Bill tell some lies, a couple of truths, some stories, and really we just want to know a little bit about Bill's history in the steel pipe business. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. And the first thing I really want to know, Bill, was what was your first job in the steel pipe business? What company? How did you come about hearing about the steel pipe business?
Well, I didn't hear about the steel pipe business. I graduated from college, didn't have a job. My wife, Betsy, who most of you know, was an accountant, and she had a job in Atlanta. So we moved to Atlanta. My first job, I ended up trying to work for a life insurance company, and I wasn't very good at it. So that lasted just a couple of months, and I went to the newspaper to look up a sales job. I wanted to be a salesman, and there was an ad in there for a steel salesman, and the ad came from L.B. Foster Company, who I did not know, and so I went out for an interview, and I was hired. And so I started work, I think, the next week. And, of course, I come out there in a three-piece suit, and I think I'm going to be in a corner office and, be president next week. And they put me on the yard.
What year was this?
This was 1973. And back in the early 70s, you only had a few very large pipe companies. There wasn't a lot of smaller companies like we have today, like your company and my company. Anyway, I went into a training program. And so I worked the first day loading trucks. So I had to take my jacket off and hop up on a truck and put chocks on a board. And that graduated into making tallies. L.B. Foster had several different products, not just pipe. So they had pipe, railroad rail, H-bearing pile, steel sheet piling, coated and wrapped pipe, and heavy equipment. They had the pile driving hammers that drove piling into the ground, both diesel hammers and vibratory hammers. So I went from working on the outside to going on the inside and making up tallies and bills of lading. And from there, I worked inside doing test reports, pulling mill test reports from pipe when the pipe things came in. And you basically were just learning the inside. And I have to say that I don't know that anybody trains today like that, but it's a very effective way of training because you learn from the ground up. You don't just go sit at the desk and here's your bunch of customers, go call and sell pipe. You actually learn what pipe is from the ground. You know what seamless pipe is, ERW pipe, continuous well pipe, coated and wrapped pipe. I worked in the coating plant for a few days. That's a real experience. Because in the 70s, fusion bond pipe had not been born. It was all coal tar enamel, hot applied coal tar enamel, and it was a very dangerous job to work in there, very hot, and a lot of dangerous fumes that you have to navigate around. But the bottom line is you get a very good grounded education. You understand what it takes to load a pipe truck, what it takes to load beams, how you load sheet piling. Railroad rail is a very difficult product to learn. You have to learn joint bars, nuts and bolts, turnouts, all the different parts of a railroad system, a frog. And there is the hardware on the ground. You get to see it. You understand how to put the thing together. From there, I went inside, and then you waited around until an opening came up for inside sales. So you would move from this to inside sales to outside sales if you were good enough and they called upon you. So one day we got the call, and there was an inside sales job in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So I came home and told Betsy, said, here's what we need to think about. And she says, well, I'm ready to go. We'll just go down there and I'll get a job with a CPA or something. I said, that's fine. So off we go to Fort Lauderdale. We spent 3 months in Fort Lauderdale in 1973 and 74. See, that would have been, let's say, at the beginning of 74. And we hated it. We both of us hated it. Because we thought we were moving to Florida to be great, but we have a saying in the South: the further south you go, the further north you go. So you end up with a lot of New Yorkers and New Jersey people who we just weren't used to being around, and they're a little faster talking than we are. So another job opening came up in Orlando, Florida, for an inside sales, and I asked to be transferred, and they did. They transferred me to Orlando, Florida. So this will be 1974. So from 74 to 1980, I had the opportunity to work with some very, very good salespeople, and I happened to be in a booming economy because Florida was building back then. The Cape Kennedy was expanding. Disney World was being built. Universal Studios was at its beginning. There were condos up and down the coast. As fast as they could build them, they were building condos. All of them took piling pipe. And we had
wasn't there a pipe shortage there in the mid 70s?
There was a pipe shortage in 1973 and 74, which I missed, but I kind of came in at that time, but I wasn't in sales. And at that period, it was U.S. Steel put everybody on allocation. You couldn't get seamless pipe. A lot of money was made in that particular period, and of course the salesman made good bonuses, but I wasn't a salesman then. So anyway, I worked inside sales for a while, and I learned how to make the giant move, because that's what we called it. It was a big corporation, and you have to get your trucks loaded. You have to know who to call, where the pipe is, where the beams are, so on and so forth. And you had to know all of your products. So aside from knowing steel pipe, which is a very difficult product to learn, and railroad rail, which is a very difficult product to learn, you were learning H-bearing pile and sheet piling, which to me was like falling asleep. I mean, they basically sold themselves. Your H-beams were 40s, 50s, and 60s. That's it. 40, 50, and 60. You had 3 or 4 sizes and one specification. And there you are. Sheet piling was the same thing. You had 2 or 3 producers and 4 or 5 different configurations. It was an easy product to learn. But you had to know all of them, because when you became an outside salesman, you would get a territory. So an opening came up, and I became an outside salesman in 1970, the end of 74. And from 74 to 80, I embarked on my road days. Everybody has, back then everybody had those type of things. You weren't going to go anywhere in Foster unless you went through the sales program. So I stayed on the road probably Tuesday through Thursday, those 3 nights, and I would make personal calls of about 10 people a day, which is almost unheard of. But I took the map out and I plotted where my customers were. And we didn't have GPS back then. You just had to get a map and plotted where everybody, and I would go right down the line and see them and have one guy for lunch, a guy for dinner. And this is after I went outside. So I can remember the day that they asked me to go outside sales, and I said, well, what exactly do you want me to do? Well, we're going to give you this car, and we want you to go out there and call on some people and take a guy to lunch and maybe play some golf, and then at night take a guy out for dinner and try to get some orders. I said, you're going to pay me for this? I thought I'd died and gone to heaven. This is great. It just suited my personality and my character, and I went to work doing that, and I worked that for about 6 years, about to 1980. And in that period of time, when I sold Launchpad 39B, and we were one of the first ones to sell pipe in 100-foot lengths. all of that happened basically over drinks and a napkin. So we're selling pipe to the phosphate industry. The phosphate industry would buy around $10 million a year worth of pipe back in the 1970s, which is a lot of money.
A lot of pipe.
It's a lot of pipe. And most people didn't even know it existed. There's only like 4 or 5 of them down there, and it was the pits to go call on. They were like an hour and a half apart, down these little skinny roads, and you go to see them as a big plant in the middle of nowhere. And so I went down there and got to know everybody and would take them to dinner. And so one night we were talking about it, and they said, you were sending these 50-foot pieces of spiral well pipe down here, and how about you guys putting flanges on them? So we went. Of course, I didn't have any way of making that happen other than just, hey, when our customers want to know if you put flanges on, we'll look into it. So decided to put flanges on the pipe. So now we got 50-footers, flange by flange. And they would take the pipe and put them together in 100-foot lengths, bolt it in the field, and drag it out to the field and put the piece together for 3 miles or 5 miles, however much they needed. And that led to the 100-foot length discussion. You think you can make this pipe in 100-foot lengths. And so that took place above my pay grade. And we had to go to the railroad to figure out how to transport the pipe.
Where was the pipe being made?
This was being made in Savannah, Georgia, because, listen, L.B. Foster was the king of spiral well pipe back then, and this happened around, I would say, the late 70s, and L.B. Foster Company got sold in 1977 to Kohlberg, Kravitz and Roberts, which was a KKR, they call them KKR. They're still there in New York today. They were buying out companies and changing them. So the Foster family exited the business, and they hired an accountant to run the L.B. Foster organization.
So did L.B. Foster actually make the pipe, or was it another?
They made the pipe.
Okay.
They bought it. They brought spiral well pipe into its heyday, basically, for foundation work. Okay, and at the time I started, I think they had 4 machines, and when I left, I think they had 11 machines, 11 or 12 machines. And
okay, so you're making now. You're going to do 100-foot lengths of this large OD.
Well, I mean, so and we were in another shortage in prices. Things were good. The deal was, hey, we're going to move this pipe 100-foot lengths. We're going to have these TTX cars. Let's build a plant in Tampa, Florida, which is close by. So it was like, well, okay, so you go out and you get contracts with these guys. So we went out and we did contracts. Okay, look, we're going to put a plant down here. If you will commit to so many tons a year, we'll put the plant right here, and here's your price that you can live with. Okay. And there was a shortage at the time, and the price of steel was going up, and they all agreed to a certain price. And I don't remember what the price was because it's too long ago. But it wasn't long after everybody signed up and the pipe mill was there going that the market crashed. Okay,
like
so now it's going
81, 82.
We've been through 5 or 6 of them. Okay, but it happened, and these guys didn't like it because they had to pay the contract price. And so that ended up being an issue, and we had to get that smoothed over. And but anyway, that's just one aspect of the thing. But
how long did you end up working for L.B. Foster?
I left them in 1980, and over the 6 years, that was one of their most productive areas was Florida, because Disney. I mean, we were selling pipe down in Disney. I mean. The Robinson Crusoe tree, I don't know if you've ever been in, that's all pipe. Space Mountain had foundation under it. Anyway, in 77, when the company was sold, the direction of the sales force was changed, and it was changed by the accountant. And the accountant came in and said, he was the president, but I mean, he didn't come out of the sales organization is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So his big idea was, we got all these guys learning all these products. We don't want to do that. We're going to have specialization. So we want to We're going to have one guy doing rail, one guy doing sheet piling, one guy doing pipe, so on and so forth. Well, I don't know where I was. I was probably out of town somewhere, and everybody else, raised their hands. I want to do sheet piling. I want to do sheet. By the time I got back to the office, there wasn't anything left but pipe. And so I was told that I'm the pipe guy now. And I said, well, what happened to, well, we're not doing it anymore. This is what we're going to do. You're going to be the pipe guy. Well, that put an end to my 10 calls a day because there isn't 10 people you can call on in a day. And, but it opened up opportunities. And so no one wanted to work with the spiral well pipe and the coating and the flanges and all the other stuff that went with it. And I just buried myself in it, learned the product, understood it. I called on engineers. I was on the road all the time. Wherever there was a ditch open, I'd stop. I just was curious. I wanted to know how a piece of pipe got bored under the road. How do you do that? And I'd sit there and watch them do it. And I watch them weld the pipe. I watch them make the pipe. I just was curious to that end. But one of the keys to being a good salesman is knowing your product. And I knew my product, okay? If I didn't know an answer to a question, I would call somebody and find out. But remember, back then, there were no cell phones. There weren't even pagers when we first started. I mean, I had to know where all the payphones were. So, we would just drive through and stop at Holiday Inn or something and go in for a few minutes and make a call and get back in the car and take off.
So that was up till 1980?
That's 1980. So 1980, L.B. Foster decided they wanted to get into the heavy wall seamless business, and they wanted to go national with it. So I was called and asked if I wanted to take over a national program and be the heavy wall czar for the United States. And I said, well, I'm not sure. Tell me what I have to do. Well, we're going to move you to Pittsburgh, which is their headquarters. And you'll be working out of there, and you'll be assisting all the branches that we have and pushing the product out and
going. You were what, 28, 29, 30?
I was 30. I was 30 years old when we did that, and just about to have our second baby. We had a baby in 1977 that didn't make it out of the hospital. So our second baby was born 1979, I think it was. Alicia was born, and so I accepted the job, and we moved up from Orlando to Pittsburgh in October. And of course, we're from the South. We're moving up here, and it's like
culture shock.
The people were great. I mean, we loved the people, and I loved Pittsburgh. It was a great place to get around. I just wasn't used to snow. So I remember when I was looking for a house, and there was a little shed out back, and I asked the guy what size pump he had back there, and he says, "What kind of pump are you talking about?" I said, "Well, that's a pump house, isn't it, for a well?" "Oh no, that's where your snowblower goes." I said, "It's a snowblower? What is that?" I didn't know what it was. So he goes and opens up the door, and this is a big damn machine with big tires on it with spikes coming out of it. And I said, "Well, I don't know." It wasn't too long. We had a snow. And it's a funny story my wife likes to tell. So I pulled that sucker out, and I cranked that thing up, and I was going to clean my driveway. Well, first of all, I didn't know how to do it. Normally, you'd blow the snow off, and you start in the middle and go out. I started on one side, and by the time I got to the middle, I had a pile of snow about 4 feet high, and it was taking me a while. And I got up to the top of the driveway, and I couldn't stop it. And the thing went across the street into my neighbor's yard and went up to his garage door and it was banging on the garage. I couldn't figure out how to turn the thing off. So finally I figured out how to turn it off. And the guy, came down and he says, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Well, sorry about the intrusion. I just couldn't figure out how to work it." But anyway, that's one of my funny stories. So anyway, I no longer got up there. I had been up there probably, I would say 6 or 8 months, made a few calls, drove around a little bit, and I got a call into headquarters office, and they said, "We've had a change of heart, and we don't want to do heavy wall pipe anymore." And I said, "What?" I said, "You moved me out of I had my territory just spinning like a top. I come up here, and now you don't want me to do this?" Well, it's just a lot of things have happened and we just don't want to do that anymore. I said, well, what do you want me to do? Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to figure something out. You just go to your office and get the paper and read the paper and we'll let you know. That's what the guy told me. So it wasn't long after that, one of my former bosses came through and he knew a guy at Valiant Steel. Now Valiant Steel is different back in 1980 than it is today, because today they don't have all the products, they just do pipe. But at that time they were a little L.B. Foster company. They came out of L.B. Foster and they made their company. They had sheet piling, beams, pipe, so on and so forth, and they needed somebody to do pipe. And I didn't know them. I didn't know who they were. And my old boss came through and, hey, I'm in town. You want to come have a beer with me at the airport? And I said, sure. So I came out and had beer with him and told him what the problem was. And he didn't say anything. He just left. And then the next thing I know, I get a call, hey, do you want to come down and interview in Atlanta, Georgia? Of course, we're thinking, well, hell yeah. I mean, get to go back to Atlanta. So I came down there and started work for Valiant Steel and just did pipe, just did steel pipe.
In Atlanta? In
Atlanta, Georgia. And we had in the meantime, and that lasted for about 2 or 3 years, it was 3 years. And we had a second baby by then. And I was calling on, and I had all my contacts, so I knew everybody at Bethlehem Steel, and I was calling on a guy, Brown Tanks in Noonan, Georgia, and he was buying large OD pipe from me, and the next thing I know, when we had another shortage, steel pipe shortage, and he was buying whatever he could buy from anybody, and next thing I know, he's got a spiral weld mill sitting in his plant. And he has his purchasing agent calling me, I hear you used to sell spiral weld pipe. And I said, well, yeah, I did for a while. I'm kind of glad I'm not doing it anymore. And he says, well, we got this mill down here. He said, maybe you can come down here and help us a little bit. And I said, well, like what? And he said, well, maybe giving us some pointers on where to buy the coils. And I said, you got a spiral weld pipe mill, you don't know where to buy the coils? I mean, come on. So anyway, so I get in the car and go down there and I look at the mill and I said, well, the first thing is you got the damn thing in here backwards. He said, what are you talking about? I said, well, you got the pipe mill going into your plant instead of out the door. Well, that's where we want it to go. I said, oh. He said, because we're using the pipe. I said, so you're not going to sell the pipe? No, we're just going to consume it. I said, well, I'm selling this guy pipe. He's not using as much as a pipe mill is going to make, okay? So at that time, Sam Brown, who was the owner, he had met us out there and we started chatting and he said, well, what are you talking about? I said, well, how many days are you going to run this machine? Oh, we'll run it probably 2 or 3 times a month. I said, you got this big machine, or you're going to run it 2 times a month? You're kidding me. No, he said, so all the pipe, we're going to run it for our own needs. That's our pipe mill. He says, why? I said, why don't you sell it? Sell the pipe. Well, how much pipe can you sell off this thing? I said, I can make the thing spin 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He said, come on in my office and let's talk. So we sat in there and we chatted a little bit, and he said, would you want to come to work for me? And I said, well, I don't know about that. Let me think about it. So I go home and I'm thinking about it, and all of these things converged at one time. This is 1983. It wasn't 2 days later, I get a call from a friend of mine from L.B. Foster who's working for another spiral weld mill in West Memphis, Arkansas. Okay, and I don't remember the name of the company. They're defunct now. But their machinery went from 8-inch through 24. And Sam's machine went from 30-inch to 84-inch. And so I'm thinking, as a pipe guy, well, that's the whole damn gamut. He says, Bill, we need somebody to represent us in the Southeast. Would you be willing to do that? I said, well, let me think about it. So here's like 2 guys within 5 days called me, and I thought, well, maybe I can do this. So I think, well, why don't I just start a company and we'll see if I can put this together. So I go to my wife, Betsy, and she says, "You want to do what?" I said, "Well, I think I can do this, Betsy." She says, "Okay." So here we are. I got 2 kids. I got a company car that I'm going to have to give up. So I got no car.
No salary.
No salary. We do have some money saved up. And I calculated that I would need about $2,100 a month to pay the rent and take care of my children. And so I go back down to Sam Brown and I said, "Sam, how about we do this? Let me rep for you. I don't want to come down here and run this thing. I don't want to do that anymore. You know, I had enough of that at Foster, but I can sell the pipe for you. So how about I sell the pipe, you buy everything, you take care of everything, you bill it. When you collect the money, you give me a commission, and I'll help you collect the money. And that way, I don't get paid until you get paid. That a deal?" He thought a minute. He got up from his chair. He walked into the other room. Now, back then we had secretaries. We didn't have, he brought the secretary back in. She sat down. He says, "Let's take a letter of agreement." It was a letter of agreement. He wrote out, had her shorthand, a letter of agreement. I sat there while she typed it. We signed it that day of what we were going to agree to, and that was in '83. And that agreement stayed with us until 1992 when he sold the company, and he did every single thing he said he was going to do. He was an honest man, straightforward. He just didn't have a pipe mill mentality, which would play back in the end. So anyway, so we go off and we start this company, Mandel Industries. But
how did you come up with Mandel?
Okay, so here's and everybody asked us that. Here's the company was supposed to be called Webco because my initials are W.E. Buckland. And so I said, well, I'm going to have Webco. So I had everything ready to go. I go to the lawyer. We're going to be Webco. He types it in. He says, "I can't have Webco." Why? Well, there's already a company named Webco. You got to have another name. I wasn't prepared for that. So I was just thinking, I said, well, you know, I got 2 daughters. One of them's named Alicia. One of them's named Amanda. I'll name it after them. Alicia Mandel. Alicia Manda. Almond. A-L-M-A-N-D. That didn't sound good. So I reversed it. Mandel, M-A-N-D-A. Well, that kind of sounded hefty, you know, like steel, you know. Yeah. So I said Mandel. So we just do Mandel, and I'm going to call it Industries because I'm not sure where I'm going with this. I mean, you know, I don't want to call it Mandel Pipe at the time. I'm going to call it Mandel Industries. So we really started off with a company named Mandel Industries, okay? And so it wasn't a week gone by, and I get a call from a gentleman named Jay Barron. I don't know if you know him, but he was an NASPD member at the time, and his company was called Barron Guernsey. He says, "Bill, I hear you're going out on your own." I said, "I am, Jay." He says, "Well, you going to need any help?" I said, "Well, of course I do. I need all the help I can get." He says, "Okay." He says, "What do you want? What are you going to do? You going to sell pipe?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to sell pipe." He said, "Okay, well, let me see if I can find some way to help you." And that was it. Talked a little bit, and he hung up the phone. The next call I got was from my ex-boss who had gotten me the job 3 years earlier. He lives in Atlanta. He got me the job with Valiant Steel, and he's still in Atlanta. He calls me and said, I hear you're going out on your own." I said, "I am." He says, "Well, do you think you need an ASIPCO distributorship?" I said, "Yeah." I said, I don't know. He says, "Well, I'm going to come pick you up, and let's go over and talk to Bill Hightower." Bill Hightower was the head guy at American Steel. So he picks me up. We drive over to Birmingham, Alabama. We meet with Bill Hightower and Don Knight, and they want to go play golf. I'm a terrible golfer, by the way. So we go out and talk and chat and everything. And at the end of the day, Hightower says to me, he says, "Bill," he said, "we'll take you on as a distributor. But I'm just going to tell you that this is a small business. It's a small circle of people. And just need to be honest with me. Don't ever do anything behind my back that's going to be a problem, because if you do, I'll find out about it. It may be a week, it may be a month, it may be a year, but I'll find out about it. Just be straightforward with us and pay your bill. I said, okay, I can do that. So I became a distributor. Now, little did I know that there's over 120 distributors. At the time, they had a whole lot of distributors. And over the years, they kept squeezing them down to where now there's only like 10 or 12, I think, distributors, American Steel Pipe. So within,
Zip code goes way back. I mean, they're an old one of the original.
Listen, they had a company store. I mean, you remember the Ernie Ford, was it Ernie Ford about the coal miner and the company store? They have a company store when I started that the employees could go and get food and stuff on credit and pay off their paychecks. Which, nobody does that today, but they had an active store back then. So anyway, so I had those two, and then it wasn't too long after that, I get a call from Chet the Jet Cressman at Bethlehem Steel asking me the same thing, what you doing? I told him, he says, well, I'll tell you what, let me see what I can do, get you some pipe, and see if we get started. So here I have backing. I don't have any money.
Pipe.
Well, I have access to pipe. I don't have any pipe because I don't have any money.
Right.
So I didn't have any sales. So I'm going to tell you the story about my first sale. I had a friend of mine in Tampa, Florida, and he was a big time pile driver. And he calls up. He hears about it. He called up and said, "Hey, are you going on your own?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "You got anything going on?" He says, "Well, not really." He said, "Yeah, I got a little job. It's got about 2 truckloads of 12-inch quarter wall. You think you can find something for me?" I said, "Yeah, let me call you back." So I'm all excited. I go around. I missed the part about me going down in the basement. I set up my office in the basement. I had a piece of plywood, 2 sawhorses, a phone from my neighbor that my neighbor lent to me, and he came over and hot wired it into our system. So I had a phone. So I'm in a basement with bare walls.
Mandel Pipes in your home's basement.
Well, it's Mandel Industries at the time. It's in my basement. It's just me sitting at a chair with a and I don't know if I don't think we ever took a picture of it, but at that time all I cared about was making some money to feed my kids. That's all I had on my mind. I got to sell something, and I can tell you that nothing so motivates you than fear, and it puts a fire under you. So anyway, this guy gives me an order for 2 truckloads of 12-inch quarter wall pipe. And I sell it to him. I made $800 or something on it, $1,200. And I was so happy that I made some money. I think, thank God that, I got some relief. And he paid on time. He always pays on time. He paid me early. And our relationship went on for years, probably about 15 years. So I'm going to finish this because you probably won't come back to it in your question. But this is how friendships play a part in your life. People come into your life and they do things for you, and you may not know it at the time, but they have an impact on you. Okay. You fast forward 15 years. My friend is going to be retiring. He sold his business. He's moving to Denver, Colorado, of all places, which is where we are today. I don't know where he is today, but anyway, I fly down to Tampa, Florida, and they have a big party for him, and everybody's, drinking beer and eating go-away cake and that kind of stuff. Party's over. I'm going to get back in my rental car to go to the hotel. I'm going to take off in the morning to go back home. And we're standing there talking. I said, appreciate everything you've done for me over the years and all the orders we've gotten, which were tremendous orders in Tampa. And I looked and I said, God, look at that piece of pipe. I said, who sold you that stuff? That stuff's rotten. I mean, there was a bunch of pipe behind him that was just eat up with rust and potholes and everything in it. I said, who sold you that? I said, who would? He said, well, you did. I said, there's no damn way. I said, I would never sell you pipe like that. He said, you did 15 years ago. He bought the pipe and he didn't need it. And he would use it a little bit from now, a little bit here, a little bit there for bracing, and never used the whole thing. He just gave me an order to get some money in my pocket. And I never knew it until that day.
Wow. That's a cool story.
That's a pretty cool story.
Yeah.
Okay, so we go back to Jay Barron, who actually was instrumental in getting me into the NASPD. He was the first contact against the NASPD that I knew.
Say his name again.
Jay Barron, B-A-R-O-N.
Who did you work with?
It was Barron Guernsey was the name of his company, okay? So he calls up one day and says, Bill, I got some pipe that we've come across in Venezuela, and you think you can do anything with it? I said, well, what is it? He said, it's a bunch of oil country reject. It's 9 5/8, 10 3/4, 13 3/8. I said, yeah, I know what to do with it. He said, okay, so we're going to bring it into Houston. And I said, how much you got? He said, we got 6,000 tons of it. I said, 6,000 tons? He said, yeah. I said, you think you can move it in Houston? I said, reject pipe? I said, I don't think so. He said, well, where would you put it? I said, I'd put it in Tampa, Florida. Tampa, Florida? I said, that's where I want to go with it. So he says, let me think about it. So we had discussions back and forth about how to do this, and I don't remember exactly the deal that I put together, but it was like, look, I think I can get this amount of money for this pipe. If I get this amount of money for this pipe, will you give me a commission on it so I didn't have to buy it? And he said, yeah, we'll do that. And I said, but I have one little itsy bitsy thing, because this is what you told me you wanted for the pipe. And I can't remember, Randy, but it was either 300 or 360 a ton. But back then that was a good price for pipe. Right. I said, so, okay, if I get this for you and I get more money than that, will you split it with me 50-50? Well, he immediately said, of course. So, I mean, that's a deal for me. So if I sell it at his price, I get my commission. If I sell it over that, I get to split whatever that difference is. And I sold that pipe all over Tampa.
For piling?
For piling. Harbor, I think it's Harbor something. They built this complex in Tampa over a landfill. And it must have had, I want to say 300, 400,000 feet of pipe in it, of our pipe, over a period of a year and a half. I just hit it at the right time. And
timing is everything sometimes.
Timing is everything. And anything that I did, that's smart, because other than put the deal together, look, I'm just a lowly pipe salesman. That's how I look at myself. I'm just a lowly pipe salesman. And I learned my trade on the ground, in the car, day after day, meeting people, seeing things, knocking on doors, calling people, and learning good and bad. Some things you did weren't too good. So I would say never precede your pipe delivery. That's a good thing. Now you wonder, what does that mean? Here's what that means. You got a guy that's bought pipe from you, and he's gonna buy 10 loads of pipe, and he wants one truckload every morning at 7 o'clock because he doesn't have room to put the pipe. Okay. So you say, okay, we're going to start on Tuesday morning. The truck's going to be there Tuesday, and every day I'm going to put a truck in there. You don't want to drive up there and be there at 7 o'clock in the morning to see the truck come in, because guess what? The truck may not come in. And if it ain't there, you're going to get pummeled while you're standing there. So that's how I came up with that statement. I never did that again. I always stayed home. So anyway, that started going, and Bethlehem Steel started going, and it wasn't long after that I get a call from the head guy at Bethlehem, and I do not remember his name, because this would be 1984, 85, something like that. He wants to see me in Bethlehem. So I get on an airplane and I fly out to Bethlehem. And they had a country club up on top of the hill, and I don't remember the name of it. But we went to lunch there, and he said, Bill, would you be willing to take pipe and market all of our piling pipe in the Southeast? I said, well, what does that mean? You told me to take all the pipe, because I don't have the money to buy that. I can tell you that right now. I said, no. He said, LaBarge has the bulk of it, and they've had it for years, and we're having some issues with them. That's the first thing. The second thing is our sales team is very slim, and they spend their days up here talking about one piece of pipe, two pieces of pipe and truckload. I don't want them doing that. I want them out here in the front end of the mill, not in the back end of the mill. And that's how I heard that term for the first time. He said, my sales team needs to be out here selling pipelines. And so what we want to do is we want to split it because LaBarge is trying to take our price down too low. We're going to give you the same price, them the same price. We have two people doing this. They can have 3/4 of the U.S. You can have 1/4 of the U.S. Would you agree to do that? I said, well, of course. So get on the airplane, come back. Now I got this problem because I don't know where to put the pipe. I don't have a yard. So I waltzed down to Sam Brown, who I'm selling spiral wheel pipe from, and I said, would you be willing to take rail cars in here of steel pipe? What size? I said, it's going to be 30-36. Oh, of course, because he uses a 30-36. So that worked out pretty well. So we did that for a couple of years and got going, and we kept doing that for a while until Valiant Steel went under. I'm not real sure what happened to that or what year that was. Anyway, Durabon took over the pipe mill, which was kind of helpful to me because I knew the Norris family. I knew Wayne Norris from my days in Florida because they had a coating mill in Jacksonville, and that's where I met Wayne. And so we knew each other, even though we didn't do much business.
So how many years were you in the basement of the Buckland?
Probably about 2 years, and about maybe 2 years. When Sam Brown bought this machine, he bought it from I can't think of the name of the company now. It was a steel mill company, and they had 3 spiral wheel machines. We only put one spiral wheel machine up to work. And Sam wanted to sell the other 2 machines. So we put the 2 machines up for sale, and Skyline, no, it was Capco, I think, that came first trying to buy the machines. And
probably for
Cartersville, Georgia. So that machine was the first machine in Cartersville, Georgia, and it came out of the yard at Brown Tanks. Okay, and they started that, and then bought another machine, and I think eventually Skyline. I think that's the way that worked out. Skyline bought it from Capco, and they were in business. And of course, they came by and tried to hire me, and I didn't want to do that. I just didn't want to be only spiral wheel pipe. I wanted to do other things.
So Mandel Industries has been darn near 40 years.
Correct.
I mean, you went L.B. Foster to basically...
1983 is when we started Mandel.
Gotcha.
In 1983.
Yeah, well, that's a long time, and you've seen so many changes in the industry. During those early parts of your, the genesis of Mandel, et cetera, you had mentioned Mr. Brown Tank. Were there other people who in the pipe business kind of served as your mentor or somebody who was very instrumental to help you get along?
I think, in the pipe industry, from the pipe side of it, I would say that I pretty much had a lot of my contacts, but Ron Williamson is another one that was very instrumental, and he was an NASPD guy, and he was really the guy that got me into the NASPD.
Ron
from Berg Steel, Berg Steel. And so Ron and I became friends when Berg Steel first opened up in the early 80s. And then in 83, when I was running the spiral wheel mill, I had to call him for some projects. It really had more to do with composite piles. A composite pile is, I don't know if you're aware of that, but the composite pile is a pile of the same OD, but different wall thicknesses. So you may have 40 feet of, say, 625 and a little bit of 750 and a little bit of 1 inch on the tip when they're going to have heavy driving. So I had one of those projects, and I called Ron. I said, will you quote me on this? He said, well, let me think about it. So he called me back. So I tell you what, we're going to quote you on this, but don't ever, same thing that, Hightowers did. This is, don't mess with me on this. We'll quote you. You get the order, you give it to me. Well, we got the order, gave him the order, and we became friends after that. And we did some business back and forth. And from time to time, he would sell me some pipe, but he never would sell me prime pipe. He just wouldn't do it. And he was protecting Labarge, because Labarge was the kingpin in those days of prime pipe.
So now, when you say he was instrumental in getting you into the NASPD, you remember the year that was?
I want to say it was 1999, 2020, yeah, somewhere around in there, 1998, 99. I don't really know.
Remember your first convention?
It was, I think it was in San Francisco, but I really don't remember exactly the first one that we went to. But it wasn't long after we got we secured a job for the Oakland San Francisco Bay Bridge, and it didn't sit too well with the Kelly Pipe people. But, that's just the way life is. And I got this guy, the guy was an Iranian, and he beat everybody up pretty bad, but we ended up with the order and shipped the pipe in there. And that was the first of the bridge. We did 4 of those bridges out there, and worked through Caltrans and so on and so forth. That was around 2000. But going back to how we got into the NASPD, see, Jay Barron took me over to the NASPD in Houston when I wasn't a member, and he said, you need to join this organization. So I went over there for one evening, and we had dinner, and it was the dinner night, the Friday night dinner thing. And I came in as a guest, and I sat at a table with 2 guys who had cheated me, and I didn't like it. I didn't take too kindly to it, and I told Jay, I said, I ain't doing that. I'm gonna get rid of it. I'm gonna go over here and sit with these guys. And that it was probably not a good thing to do for me. I probably should have joined earlier. But Ron and I, we'd been friends, and we drank some beer together, and he would say, Bill, you need to come back and try it again. And I said, well, I just don't want to go. I just want to do that, sit with these people. He says, well, look, he said, I tell you what, you need to get off of that. He says, the more people we get in the organization that's good, the less people we're going to have that's not good. And we can overpower them. We can do some way to kind of push them off to the side, and eventually we'll have a good group. I said, well, that makes sense. And that's how I got in. So it was Ron that actually pulled me into
Who were some of the characters you remember, the first people that, you remember meeting at these NASPD meetings that maybe you ended up hanging out with or becoming friends with?
Well, I was already friends with a lot of them in there, so I can't say that that I had any new. I pretty much knew everybody, because I was running a pipe mill for a while. So all your pipe guys are going to come over to you. But a lot of the new guys, it wasn't really until later on when I was doing the book, the pipe book, that I met a lot of the guys like Bob Rao. Did you know Bob Rao? What a nice guy that was. He's just a treasure trove of information.
Past NASPD president.
Yeah, he was, and I had to liaison with him a lot for the book that we were producing, and
Tubular products manual.
Well, no, it was the World of Pipe. We did the World of Pipe first, and then we did. And so we were working on this project, and Susanna called me one day, and she says, Bill, we said, do you know anybody that knows all of the pipe? Because you asked me about the changes in the pipe business. The changes in the pipe business were really specialization, because early on, everybody did all the pipe. We did continuous weld, ERW, seamless pipe, spiral weld pipe, big OD pipe. And then it just kind of migrated into coated and wrapped coating people are over here. You got the seamless guys over here. You got line pipe guys over here, and everybody was specialization, you know. And I can remember talking to one of the salesmen at Bentler Tube, and it was a lady, we were in a conversation, and she asked me what I saw. I said, well, I sell large OD pipe. She said, oh, you sell 8-inch and 10-inch? I said, no, I sell 48 through 60. They make 60-inch pipe? She never knew. I said, well, yeah. I said, well, what size pipe do you sell? Well, we sell 1/4 inch through. I'm thinking, you got like 200,000 feet of pipe on one truck, to make a truckload. Anyway.
Well, do you have, talking about NASPD conventions, do you have one that is memorable to you, one that stood out, a unique location, maybe something unique that happened at one of these? Or
well, that Coeur d'Alene one was really, really nice. And the Pittsburgh one, that one, the two, because, Coeur d'Alene was so nice, and then you go to Pittsburgh and you have the furries. You remember the furries? I mean, that's kind of a memorable one, when they, when you get in an elevator with a cat and a dog and they're both licking each other, and it's like, I don't know, maybe we need to go get another hotel or something. That was pretty memorable.
Yeah, and Coeur d'Alene was nice.
Yeah, I think Pittsburgh, when I was president, having having an opportunity to introduce the president of U.S. Steel is pretty interesting. And I told the story of how U.S. Steel was formed. And after it was over with, what was that guy's name? Was the president? He came up to me afterward. He says, Bill, he said, that was a very good introduction. He says, I didn't think anybody ever knew that story. I said, well, I'd read it once and I did some research. And so,
I remember that very well. Yeah, that was a good meeting. It was one of the few times I'd ever been to Pittsburgh, and I enjoyed it.
I don't know why we don't go there more often. You got access to all these steel people. I mean,
Well, we'll have to try to get her back on the agenda. So going back, now that we've covered a little bit of the NASPD, and we can talk more about it if you like, but going back and, thinking, after now that you've been in the pipe business, Bill, darn near 50 years, you're closing in on 50 years. If you could go back and give advice to a young man and go back in your career, what kind of advice would you give a new young guy coming up in
sales? In sales? I would say there's probably 3 or 4 keys. The first thing is to know your product. You need to know your product inside and out. And that's why I was emphasizing earlier on that the education that you got at L.B. Foster was for a reason. And the reason was, as was told to me, when you're on the desk and somebody asks you a question, you can put the man on hold and say, hey, you guys know about blah, blah, blah. But when you get in front of a guy one-on-one, you can't put him on hold. And he's going to know pretty quick whether you know what you're talking about or not. So after you spend a couple of years, in the yard, through the process, inside sales, understanding how to get trucks, make everything move, and then you move to outside sales, it's pretty much, it's secondhand. And the second thing I would say would be persistence. You have to have persistence to keep at it and keep calling these people and keep in front of them, and eventually they'll buy something from you. And I think the third thing probably would be honesty and integrity. If you do what you say all of the time, you will eventually have a very good following. In the beginning, they won't know. But when you tell a guy that you can get pipe to him in 2 weeks and you know damn good and well it's going to take 4, you do that once or twice and you're not going to have a very big following. You just be honest and tell them. And when you find out the truck's not going to show up, you pick that phone up immediately and you call the guy. I know your truck's supposed to be there in the morning, but we've had some problems. It's not going to go. You're not going to get it in the morning. Is he going to be mad? Yeah. But you know what? He ain't going to be mad for long, because now he knows the truck ain't coming and he can go change his crew, because he's got a crew out there that he's paying for and he can go get them to do something else. So those 3 things are probably a key to being a good salesman.
And Was there ever a pivotal time in your career, a defining moment that you think, may have turned the tables on your career into the direction that it went?
I would say 1991. It probably started out in 1989, if you're old enough to remember the failure of the thrifts, because the banking industry has had two big failures in my lifetime. One of them is the thrifts, and the other was the subprime loans, which happened in 2000, was it 6 or 7? Somewhere in there. So in 89, Ronald Reagan took out Manuel Noriega in the country of Panama. And Noriega was laundering money from the drug trade. The money from the drug trade, which was all cash, went into Panama. It would go to India into a bank called First American Bank. The First American Bank was owned by he was the Treasury Secretary under Carter. Can't think of his name right now, but anyway, that was our bank, First American Bank. So we had two catastrophic things happen between 1989 and 1991. The first thing was the failure of the thrifts, of which First American. So what happened was, if you can envision the money flowing here to here to here, and the flow stops. Well, eventually that money stops. So one day I get a call, and this guy comes. He says, "I'm from First American Bank. I need to see his wife." And I said, "Oh, okay." I didn't know who he was. He comes in a briefcase. He's about 30 years old. Opens up his briefcase. He says, "I'm here to call the loan." I said, "Well, what are you going to call it?" I didn't know what he was talking about. It just never passed my mind. He said, "Well, we just need to get our money back for our loan." I said, "Well, why? What did I do wrong?" I said, "We hadn't done anything wrong, but we're calling all of our loans. And that's just what I'm here to do." I said, "So what do you want me to do? I mean, you want me to give you cash or something?" He says, "Well, we just need you to write a check for our loan." I said, "Well, I can't do that." I said, "If you want it, you can go get it. It's just some pipe over here and there's pipe over there. You can go get that, or you can take my keys." I threw the keys. I was getting pissed off about it, and he says, "Well, that's what we're going to have to do, and you're just going to have to, find a way to get us our money." So he walks out, and this was in 1989, and that was I think another big oil crash was that year, and so the oil business just crashed, and during that time there was pipe everywhere, and it was flowing like crazy, like it always does. Oil country pipe's like a light switch. You turn it on and you turn it off, and you turn it on, and you turn it off. At the time, I had the biggest stock item I had, and I was in oil country at the time. In addition to everything else, I was doing some oil country. And we had 30,000 feet of 9.5 1/8-inch pipe sitting at Cotton's Inspection on Miller Road in Houston, Texas. And I had just been down there like a month before taking inventory. And so you couldn't sell the pipe. It was hard to sell. And finally, I got a sale for it. And I'm thinking, hallelujah, so we sent the trucks in. And about 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, I get a call and said, "Bill, there's a problem down here. Our truck drivers are over there, and they're telling him they can't find the pipe." And I said, "What do you mean you can't find it?" "I was just down there taking inventory. It's on rack K9. I mean, I even knew what the rack number was." So I called down there, and nobody answered the phone. And come to find out, they had filed for bankruptcy, and the pipe was gone. So I said, "What?" "Well, there is no pipe down here. The pipe's not there." I said, "Well, where is it? I mean, I was just down there looking at it. It's not here." And I'm thinking, oh my God. So I got on a plane. I want to say it was that day. I got on a plane and went down there, and went over the first thing in the morning, and you couldn't see anybody. There wasn't anybody there. And I finally got a hold of some guy in the yard. He says, "Yeah." He says, "Well, they've been loading this pipe out for a long time." I said, who's they? He said, I don't know. Just trucks come in. And he didn't know what it was. Couldn't get a hold of anybody. So basically, I not only didn't have a bank, I didn't have 30,000 feet of 95/8. And you're talking about a body blow to a company that's only like 6 years old, 7 years old.
And so they basically, the people who were storing the pipe from.
That's correct.
They just took the pipe, took it somewhere else,
I don't
sold
know.
it somewhere,
Don't
and then just abandoned
Never
everything.
knew. I never knew.
You never found out.
Never found out.
Couldn't find the people.
Couldn't find the people. So, what are you going to do? You're going to sue a company that's bankrupt? You're going to hire a private detective to go find the pipe in Houston, Texas? I mean, that ain't going to work. So I'm sitting here thinking, man, this is not good. So, it was a very, very bad time, and it threw us into a tailspin. And so I called my vendors and asked them, could they help me out? And, we'd have some problems. And I had to go over to SIPCO because I had some pipe. And then I told Nate over there, told him what happened. He said, why don't you sue them? I told him the same thing. I said, who are you going to sue? Anybody there? I said, so well, listen, what I need from you is just another month or so, and I'll come up with the money. He said, okay, Bill, you got it. So I got in my car and went back, and I said, thank God, that he did that. Well, as it turns out, I was able to collect money from other things, and I paid him on time. And this was in 91. And he told that story to everybody that called in for credit on us. He would tell them that story. But it boiled over to 1991, and Betsy came in to by this time we had moved into a house. We bought a house and turned it into an office and for an investment type thing. And Betsy came in one day and says, you need to face reality. It's over. This ain't going to go. We just can't keep doing this. And I said, I told her, I said, you're going to have to come pry my hands off this chair. I'm not stopping. I am not going to stop. And this is once again where relationships come into play. So one of my good friends who was in Florida called me up and said, Bill, we're doing a job down in Tampa, Florida, and we're going to need about 250,000 feet of 8-inch 188 wall pipe. And I said, whoa. So I said, well, let me see what I can do. I had no sooner gotten off the phone and Mr. Barron called in and just wanted to see how I was doing. And, he heard about, our problems. And I said, Jay, just as an aside, I said, you know where I can get a bunch of 8-inch pipe? He said, actually, I do. He said, let me call you back. Well, as it turned out, Diamond Shamrock had just pulled a bunch of 8-inch 219 X52 pipe out of the ground. It was sitting over in Richards, Texas. And I said, So I called my friend and said, you think you can use 8-inch 219? He said, well, hell yeah. I said, what's the price? I gave it to him. He said, that'll work. So he goes and he says, but I got to get this sold because the city of Tampa owns the project. This is going to a sewage treatment plant, okay? And so what the deal was, and this happens in a lot of big cities, happens in New York all the time, you can't go buy land and get through the EPA to build a sewage treatment plant. But what you can do is you can bring the pipe to the sewage treatment plant. So as people go further and further out, you pipe it further and further into the plant and use it. So they wanted to use this plant and beef it up because they already had the property and, but it was in a bad spot and it's going to take a lot of pipe to fix it up. So Jay Barron put me in touch with Diamond Shamrock, and two things happened. We got the order, we bought the pipe from Diamond Shamrock, and I had to figure out some way to come up with a bunch of money. So enter an investment guy in Jacksonville, Florida, and he decided he was going to help finance both the contractor and myself, and he would take a % of the profit. Okay, so with that, we went and bought the pipe from Diamond Shamrock. Well, that 250,000 feet ended up being 468,000 feet of pipe. This was in 1992. It is still today the largest pipe piling job ever in the state of Florida, under a sewage treatment plant. But hey, that's the way it worked.
Oh, that's an awesome story. So you went from thinking this is over to...
No, she thought it was over. I wasn't ever going to think it was over, but she probably was right. Look, she was looking at the numbers and it just didn't look good, and we were scrambling, and we had people cheat us and lie to us and steal from us. And look, this was before they had release numbers. Yeah. Do you remember that? You used to go into Houston, Texas, there wasn't any release numbers. When I was in Houston, Texas, I drove around the yards and, I'd see a stack of pipe and I'd try to put two and two together. And incidentally, that's how I met Jim Mcconaughey. You know Jim Mcconaughey? Well, you probably know Rooster Mcconaughey or one of those, but Jim Mcconaughey and I became friends because I met him on the yards. And we became partners in an inland bay drilling rig in I don't remember when that was. That was in the 80s, I think, late 80s. We bought a drilling rig together, a floating city drilling rig. And we weren't very good at that either. That didn't turn out very good. But anyway, Jim was the father of Matthew Mcconaughey, and I can remember going out with Jim to dinner, and he would just say, I don't want to do that boy Matthew. I said, what's the matter with Matthew? He says, boy, all he wants to do is play golf. You know what he wants to do, Bill? He wants to go to acting school. Can you believe it? This was over dinner, and I didn't know Matthew Mcconaughey, still don't, to this day, but I knew Jim. And anyway, it turned out that Jim died before Matthew became famous, which is unfortunate. But Jim was a character. He's a real character. And anyway.
All right, very good.
So there we are. That's my Florida story.
Well, I love it. If you were to tell somebody, again, telling these younger guys and gals coming up in the business, what would the secret to your success be in the pipe business?
Well, I've pretty much already told you that. I know my product. I work hard. I always tell people I'm almost retired. I'm only doing 40 hours a week. You're going to go into business. I didn't start my business to be wealthy. It was the furthest thing from my mind. I love the game. I loved what I was doing. I love to be able to bargain and to put things together. I love people. I love the art of the deal, basically. Yeah. Putting a deal together. And I knew my product. And I was honest with people. And I surrounded myself with people who were honest. And if I knew that you were a cheater or in some way had a bad reputation, I just wouldn't deal with you. I didn't need you. And it's amazing how many people would come, take me into their yards and show me around, and they're in the back there, they're doing stuff that, it's not legal. And I guess they just think I don't know what I'm looking at. But I've run a pipe mill. I've been in coating mills. I've been in pipe mills all over the world. I know what I'm looking at. Okay. And so when you go out and you ask me a question, if it's not extremely technical, I can pretty much answer it. But when it gets in the technical part of metallurgy and that kind of stuff, that's not my game. You need to call somebody to do a bit. But I work hard and I'm honest and above board with people, and I pay my bills on time, and that's thanks to Betsy. My wife's an accountant, and she's been an integral part of the business since day one. And part of this you have to attribute to her, because she makes sure that I have good information to make decisions. And she's very meticulous about paying people on time, and it's paid off over the years. Okay, so.
Well, one last thing I wanted to ask you was, and it's kind of a shift of gears, but besides your career, other than your steel pipe career, what is something that maybe you're most proud of, or what maybe gives you great joy or satisfaction in your life?
Well, there's nothing better than my family. I can't. I don't know what I'd do without my two beautiful daughters, and They're happily married now, and I've got 5 grandkids. I love them all. Of course, Betsy she's the love of my life, and we're about to have our 48th anniversary. And so, you might add to that list of things to do is to be happy with your mate. If you be happy with your mate and keep your life clean and do the things, ingratiate yourself into the community, help out with your church. You do all of these things. They come back to help you, and people will help you, and they come to help you when you don't think that you have any friends, and then all of a sudden the phone rings and people are there to, say, hey, do you need any help? It's like people calling me when, can I help you? How can I help you? It's like, I didn't know I had these good friends, and they push you along the way and give you a ray of light, show you a road that you didn't know about, and you come out the other side because you're consistent and you're persistent and you're honest, and you have a focus on on what you want to do. You don't want to do, it's like the Curly in that movie said, just do one thing. You remember that? What was that? City Slickers? And I said, just do one thing. So when we decided that we just wanted to do steel pipe, and by the way, that's when we changed our name. We changed our name in 1995 to reflect basically what we were doing, because originally I thought I would be doing a lot of other stuff, and we just along the way let those die, and we just wanted to do steel pipe. Steel pipe was what I knew. It brings us our income, and so we settled down. We changed the name to Mantle Pipe so everybody would know that we were a pipe company. But we did that after we became members of the NASPD.
Very good.
So,
well, Bill, I really appreciate your time today. It was a great interview. I loved hearing the stories.
I've got more stories to tell. You're not going
Okay.
No, I'm just joking. We'd be here all night listening to them.
Well, it's fun. One of these times I think I'm going to have a round table. Get everybody a beer or a cocktail, and 5 or 8 guys, right, and just turn on the camera and go. But that'll have to be.
I'll tell you who you need to get. And I don't know Gus Demas, but Gus Demas knows a lot of people, and Jim Barnes, some of these guys that can tell you, because I've tried to get Jim Barnes. I said we need to do a tree, because the pipe company has all kind of come out, from different. You're either Tubular Steel, Valley Steel, LB Foster, and people come out, and then people come out of that company and go. And if we kind of just did that, tree, while we have people who remember what it is, because I can't. What's your name again? Yeah. No, just joking. All us older guys. But that's a good idea, Randy. And if you could get 3 or 4 of us in, because we would together remember things and how they started, because there is a definite path to go forward.
Well, listen, I greatly appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you,
I guess
Bill.
I'm out of here.
All right.